Good evening and welcome to tonight's Medtronic Diabetes webinar. Joining us tonight are our two guest speakers, Dr. Sarah Glastris and MM640G insulin pump user, Gareth. My name is Dan Kanakis. I'm part of the Medtronic Diabetes marketing team here in Sydney, and I'll be your host for tonight's event. Just a bit of housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask during the event, please feel free to reach out to us through our Facebook page, Medtronic Diabetes Oz, or through Twitter using the hashtag 640G webinar. Okay, now to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Sarah Glastris. Pardon me.
Hi Dean, thanks so much for inviting me on the webinar tonight. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Sarah. So just a bit of background on Dr. Glastris. She's a specialist in endocrinology at Royal North Shore Hospital, a consultant endocrinologist at Northern Sydney Endocrine Centre, and visiting medical officer at North Shore Private Hospital. Dr. Sarah Glastris is an endocrinologist and research fellow affiliated with the University of Sydney and Royal North Shore Hospital. She's currently undertaking a PhD in the area of metabolic dysregulation and obesity, aiming to determine the molecular mechanisms that underlie the contribution of obesity towards end organ damage, in particular chronic kidney disease. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Glastris.
Thank you.
Okay, now for our other guest speaker, Gareth. Hold on, got a little bit of technical difficulties here with the slides, if you just bear with us. And over to, oh, there we go, screen 2. Okay, so Gareth has had type 1 diabetes for 25 years. He switched from multiple daily injections to an insulin pump because he still had highs and lows throughout the day and night, which particularly affected his productivity at work. His daughter Shiloh also has type 1 diabetes. Diagnosed at just 29 months, Shiloh uses the MiniMed640G insulin pump with SmartCard. Fewer injections, 24-hour monitoring, and plenty of dips in the pool have given more freedom to the Collins family. Thank you for joining us, Gareth.
Thanks, Dean. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so just another reminder, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask while we're live, please feel free to reach out to us through our Facebook page. Okay, so now Gareth, first question for you. What were your initial concerns about using an insulin pump, and what convinced you to change from injections?
Good question. It really came down to, after being on multiple daily injections for 16 odd years and having 30-odd thousand injections in that time, which obviously is about 5 injections a day and a very stringent regime around food for the insulin that I was having the other way around, tired of being a pincushion. So with direct was introduced to the pump therapy, which just opened everything up. I was also having the dawn phenomenon, which the long-acting insulin at the time wasn't able to rectify. So we thought that was going to be the best course of action to be able to smooth out those highs and lows during the night and move forward from there. And happy to say that as soon as we went on the pump and a few of the quick little changes over the night period with a CGM, we'll be able to we identified the exact problem and just smoothed it over, so which is great.
Right, thank you very much for that, Gareth. Now over to you, Dr. Glastris. Just one of our registrants just seeking general information on pumps around cost, pain, convenience and control. Having used pens most of their life, they were hesitant towards change. Any advice you can give around that?
So, yeah, sure. So what I would say firstly is I absolutely appreciate difficulties with change, and I think if you're someone with type 1 diabetes and you've been managing for a very long time with multiple daily injections, it is something to get your head around. I think what you want to do is think of an insulin pump really as an insulin delivery device. Really, it's only as good as your operator. So you really need to have a good understanding of your diabetes, know how to use the pump, and if you've got those two things in place, then really it's something you should absolutely consider. I think a question there about cost, I think that always comes up. If you have private health insurance, then most covers will be able to cover that for you. I think what I'd suggest with that is that if anyone wants more information about pumps, what they're best to do is contact the pump company and ask them to make inquiries really on your behalf. In terms of the everyday management of pump therapy, you're sort of looking at, in terms of consumables, on a monthly basis of about $30 or so. So that's an out-of-pocket expense at this stage. I think Gareth just mentioned all those injections that he used to have, and that's, I think, one great thing about pump therapy is much less discomfort in terms of doing lots of daily injections. So, of course, when you put the set in, which is what you use every 3 days, when you change over the bit that goes on you, when you attach the pump to you, you change that every 3 days, and you might have some minor discomfort with that, but in terms of pain, you've generally got a whole lot less discomfort. And really the convenience is what's so good about pump therapy. It really allows you to be more flexible about what you do in your life. Gareth mentioned a couple of issues there related to dawn phenomenon and what he was doing during the day and so forth, in terms of the problem with, you know, your general insulins like Lantus and Levemir and maybe Protophane some patients might be on. These are the long-acting insulins. What happens is you put in your insulin and you're kind of stuck with it, that dose that you put in the night before or the day before, and you can't alter that. So the only way to get around that is to eat food, to avoid the lows, and so you sort of play this game of catch-up all the time. And one great feature of having a pump is that you can be more flexible about your lifestyle and tell the pump what you're doing in terms of dropping rates and things like that, and make the whole thing a lot more smooth and more physiological, really, what your body would normally want to do if you produce your own insulin. So those are really the major advantages.
Thank you, Dr. Glashus. So back over to you, Gareth. What are the advantages to using this pump over other therapies such as pens?
As Sarah just said, it really comes down to flexibility in your lifestyle. It is still just a management process. You still have to have a clear understanding of what your implications are going to do when you do it on your pump. But you can start living your life around the pump rather than around the insulin you have on board. So for one day, I'll have a salad for lunch with minimal carbs. It means that I can have that and not have to boost up for other carbs that I was doing previous to the pump. Sport and that sort of thing. So I'm about to go skiing down New Zealand, and being my activity for the full day, I'll put my pump 50% of what I would usually have, losing calories throughout the day, and I'm going to make that change and know that my blood sugar isn't just going to drop rapidly throughout that time because I need less sugar on board. So it really does open it up. And with my daughter, it means that we're not giving her a needle every time she wants food. So being 5 years old, she eats, you know, little bits and pieces here, there, and everywhere. So she can actually be a little girl rather than having to stick to strict rules and regulations around what she eats, when she eats, and having to make sure she eats everything at the same time.
Right, thank you, Gareth. Now, back over to you, Dr. Glashus. How does the pump help reduce long-term complications and the impact of health issues?
So I think we've known for quite some time, several decades, that better glycemic control will reduce long-term complications of diabetes. And so we know if you look at a measure like HbA1c, which is a measure of glycemic control or overall sugar control, if you drop that by 1%, you have a 40% reduction in risk related to complications. So if you're using something like an insulin pump, and that's enabling you to improve your overall glycemic control, then hopefully by default, therefore, you will reduce your complications risk. And there's been several studies that have shown that have demonstrated that. I think one difficulty in the area of rigorous scientific types of studies is that it's hard to put a pump on somebody and blind them to it. So you're always limited in the studies by the type of design you can do with pump therapy, but nonetheless, nonetheless, I think most studies have shown that glycemic control can certainly be improved by pump therapy, and also glycemic variability. So the amount your blood glucose levels vary from being up and down and all over the place, that can really reduce that problem and thereby overall reduce your glycemic control and variability, and reduce complications risk.
Right, thank you very much, Dr. Glastris. Okay, everyone, just a reminder, if you have any questions, please do reach out to us via our Facebook page, Medtronic Diabetes Australia, or through using the tweet hashtag 640G webinar. Okay, so next question, back over to you, Gareth. With the infusion set under your skin for days at a time, do you experience infections?
Well, basically, whenever we put an infusion set in, and this is on myself or my daughter, it is recommended that it stays within 3 days. So we stick to that quite vigorously. Now, I've got a plastic cannula on my infusion set, which is a 3-day time, but my daughter, being obviously a little girl, running around a lot and jumping around, she's got a little metal cannula, and that's recommended for 2 days. We stick to that, so we don't really get any infections. I think my daughter has had one, but that was fixed quite easily with some antibiotic cream, and it sorted itself out. But if you stick to what is recommended and you swap it out when you're supposed to swap it out, then it's just a matter of swapping, moving somewhere else, rotating around, and just keep going on. So I think in 10 years, I don't think I've had a single infection as yet.
Thank you very much, Gareth. Now back over to you, Dr. Glastris. I've managed well over the years with pens. What would be your main reason for me moving to a pump?
I think both Gareth and I have already, alluded to this fact. It's really about flexibility. It's just the ability to be able to change what insulin delivery you're having at the various time points in your life. If it's exercising, you can reduce your rates. If you know that it's a sleep-in day on a Sunday morning, for example, you can change your rates accordingly. If you're going to a cocktail party, you can, tell the bolus wizard that you're going to give the bolus or the Novo Rapid bolus equivalent in a different type of frame wave. So not giving it all at once, but maybe delaying some portion of the bolus till later on in the evening. These kinds of things. So it's just allowing much more flexibility, and I think the other thing about that is reducing hypoglycemia. So I think that the best evidence we have about the benefit of pump therapy is reduction in hypos, and that's seen whether or not you link it up with the continuous blood glucose monitor that Gareth was referring to. So you can get this system in place, especially with the Medtronic Mini Med G, the 640G, where you pair that with real-time continuous blood glucose monitoring, and essentially you've got a closed loop system at low blood glucose levels. So what that means is if the continuous blood glucose monitor is sensing that your blood glucose is dropping to a low point or is at a low point, it can turn the pump off. And so that is really a very effective way of reducing hypoglycemia, for example, during the night. So I think those two things, it's the flexibility and reduction in hypoglycemia, that I think are the biggest draw cards for thinking about moving from multiple daily injections to pump therapy.
Right, thank you very much, Dr. Glastris. Back over to you, Gareth. Do you find the pump is inconvenient when sleeping, and what has been your experience with damage to the pump?
Okay, the first, sleeping. No, not at all. I think the first few nights with having it, you go through the worry of what is it going to do? Am I going to get tangled? Is it going to pull out? Or whatever the case may be. But you quickly realise that I attach it to my shorts. It's just there. It doesn't hinder you. You get used to it very quickly, and you just keep living. My daughter's the same. She just came to it and just accepted it straight away. She sleeps on it. It ends up in the middle of her back. It ends up on the side, or up near her head. It's just there. It's just a part of you, and you just keep doing what you do. You get used to things extremely quickly. In regards to the damage to the pumps, so we have had a few cases where Shiloh has either fallen over in a position and it's cracked a screen or something like that. However, one quick call into Medtronic, and because it is a great service, we've basically had a replacement within a day for all those pumps. Now, I even go back to, I used to look after kids down at a camp in Victoria, and we were in the middle of the Otway Ranges, and one of the kids had a pump, and the scroll button just kept scrolling through. So obviously they couldn't really malfunction. The pump had actually malfunctioned. So we climbed to the top of the rock, called Medtronic, and we're about an hour away from camp. And we found that by the time we got to the rock, made the call, gotten back down to the bus and gone back to camp, there was a pump waiting for us, which is just great. So you've always got that peace of mind. So no matter what happens, whether it malfunctions or whether it becomes damaged, it gets replaced.
Great to hear, Gareth. Dr. Glastris, back over to you again. What would your advice be to parents whose child is newly diagnosed with type 1 regarding pump therapy?
Well, look, I think to answer that person's query, really, I think it's a discussion you've got to have with the diabetes team that you're involved with. So I don't think it's ever too early to discuss insulin pump therapy. As I said, it's really an insulin delivery system. That's really how you should think about it. So to me, it's never really too soon to think about it. I do think that you've got to have some understanding and knowledge about what type 1 diabetes is and how to manage, sick days and what diabetic ketoacidosis is and what those sorts of things mean in terms of how you might manage those sort of higher risk situations. But look, those kinds of things can actually happen reasonably quickly as either a patient or a parent caring for somebody with type 1 diabetes. So I think really that you just need to initiate the dialogue with your diabetes management team and find information. And maybe it's not right for your child straight away, but it's absolutely something you should think about very early on.
Right, thank you very much for that, Dr. Glastris. Okay, guys at home, just again, if you have any questions that you want to ask us, please feel free to reach out to us through Facebook or Twitter on the accounts featured on the screen right now. Now, back over to you, Gareth, for our next question. Are you connected to the pump 24/7, and do you ever disconnect?
Simply put, yes. Both my daughter and I are connected 24/7. I obviously disconnect for having a shower. But now with the 640G system being waterproof, we can go swimming. As I said before, I take it snow skiing as long as it's all tucked in and there's no lines popped out where it can freeze. But yeah, it's on me 24/7. I have at times when I've gone to a water theme park, have disconnected for a number of hours. But that's just a matter of managing your levels, possibly with injections for a day, and then going straight back onto the pump again. So you just monitor that with your team before you go and do it, make sure you understand the levels and the amounts of insulin you require for that time, and you can then jump in and jump out with the pump and do exactly what you need to do.
Thank you very much, Gareth. Back over to you, Dr. Glastris. So my life is both active and dormant. I've found that I need to change my injections when active and not active. Sometimes I just get it wrong and I hypo occasionally. Otherwise, daily readings are usually 10 plus. How is a pump going to change this if I would be scared to let go of self-control?
So I think what you've described, whoever you are, you've just described the life of somebody with type 1 diabetes on multiple daily injections. It's really hard to get it right. You will have more active days and less active days. And you'll have that whether you're on an insulin pump or whether you're not. I guess, the advantage of an insulin pump, of managing with an insulin pump, is that ability to really be flexible about the types of setups you've got. So you might have, a setup which is your basal rates that you might have on a work day, and then you might have another set B, or another type of setup that you might have for the weekend, or you might have one for a gym day, or the day that you go marathon running, or whatever it is that you do. And you can set up those things with your diabetes management team. So those things do need to have a little bit of pre-thought about what's going to go on and how you're going to set those things up. But essentially, that's the major advantage, that you can have a different setup for whatever you're doing. And you know what, if it's ad hoc and you just decide that today you're going to go to the gym, you can tell your pump, look, I need to only have 80% or 70% of my basal rate right now because I'm going to the gym and I need it to be like that for the next 4 hours. And you basically tell the pump that, and it'll then set you up so you're good to go for the next 4 hours. And so it's just really helping you be more flexible with your lifestyle, and I think also just avoiding that need to eat to avoid hypoglycemia. And to me, that just makes no sense. I mean, if you're going to go to the gym and you want to lose 5 kilos, well, why should you have to go and have a Gatorade and half a sandwich before you do so? So I think that it's just making life more simple and trying to get it back to what physiologically your body would do. And again, I totally understand the issue of self-control and knowing your diabetes and knowing what you're doing now and being a little bit just apprehensive about moving to an insulin pump. So just have a chat with your diabetes management team, contact Medtronic, contact as many people as you can to get as much information as you can so that you can make a really good informed decision about whether it's right for you.
Thank you, Dr. Glastris. Okay, back over to you, Gareth. How much pain does the pump cause? Is there bruising or scarring?
The pain, if you're having multiple daily injections, putting the infusion side in is no different. It's still an injection. The only difference is you're leaving a little cannula in place. Once you remove the actual needle itself, you can't feel it at all. Sometimes you'll hit a nerve, but at the same time, when you're doing multiple daily injections, sometimes you'll hit a nerve. So I wouldn't say there is any difference whatsoever. Bruising and scarring, I pretty much say it's exactly the same as MDI. Sometimes you hit a bad spot and you'll double over, or you'll just get in pain. But I got that when I was having multiple dailies, and I'll still have them now if I get to the wrong part. But all in all, it's fairly easy, and there's no real concerns.
Thank you, Gareth. Okay, back over to you, Dr. Glastris. Why do certain doctors recommend the pump early on, but others want you to get better control with injections? Does the pump not achieve this?
Well, that's a difficult question. I can only speak on my own behalf of what I do as a clinician. I think the bottom line is there's no great evidence a particular pathway is best. So each clinician, each diabetes management team, diabetes educators have different pathways and protocols for what they do. I mean, I can tell you what I do, and I guess I like my patients to have a reasonable understanding of carbohydrate counting before they start insulin pump therapy. They don't have to be rocket scientists at being able to accurately look at food and work out the carbohydrate content in it, but obviously having a bit of an idea, knowing how to read a label, having some general understanding about carbohydrates in food is pretty important. It's important anyway if you've got type 1 diabetes, and actually you can learn on the job a bit as well. So just like with multiple daily injections, if you use a dose of Nova Rapid or Humalog or Pedro and you get it wrong, well, your sugar's going to go from 7 to 14. You got it wrong. The same thing applies with the pump. If you look at a particular food and you make a bad judgment, well, you'll soon see what happens, and you can then play trial and error a bit with it. There's lots of different courses you can do across the country about carbohydrate counting, and all those things are useful things to do. At the end of the day, again, I just think you got to think of an insulin pump as an insulin delivery device, and that's what it is. And if that's something that you think that would be good for you, as in terms of your lifestyle, you should absolutely discuss it with your team.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Glastris. Okay, everyone, just another quick reminder, if you have any questions that you want to ask, please feel free to reach out to us through Facebook, Medtronic Diabetes Oz, or via tweeting #640G webinar. Okay, next question, back to you, Gareth. How many hypos do you get now, and how often do you treat them?
So now with the 640G system, we're connected with the continual blood glucose monitor 24/7. So previous to the system, I was probably having 2 or 3 every now and then, just minor ones. My daughter, however, when she started kinder, she was having 2 or 3 a week, But once going on the 640G with the SmartGuard function, which actually predicts the actual lows before they happen and shut the pump off, we've pretty much eradicated any of the lows into the 2s. They'll get to maybe the high 3s at worst, but that's at the lowest point before the pump has been shut off for some time, and then as it then realizes that you're coming back up, it'll then turn back on again. It has actually leveled things out quite well. When we do have a low, if the CGM isn't on, we treat it exactly the same. We have 15 grams of carbs, wait 15 minutes, and then if test again. So there's not too much difference other than the fact of not having the long-acting carbs after having the 15 grams or so.
Right, thank you very much for that, Gareth. Okay, now back over to you, Dr. Glastris. Have you had many patients complain of hypo events once they have commenced on insulin pump therapy?
Yes, look, I think hypoglycemia is a part of living with type 1 diabetes, and as I mentioned before, sometimes you will just get things wrong, and if you give too much insulin via pump or not, it may cause hypoglycemia. I think as I mentioned before as well, that's probably where the best evidence is for pump therapy, is actually a reduction in hypoglycemia. So yes, you are likely to still get hypos, don't get me wrong there, but you'll get less on pump therapy than when you're on multiple daily injections, and that's mainly because you can adjust things in a much more flexible way. Like Gareth just said, look, I'd reiterate that if you're running the real-time CGM, the SmartGuard alongside your pump, then you certainly will have a reduction in hypoglycemia, and I think a recent study showed an 80% reduction using the MiniMed 640G alongside CGMS, that really does by 80% reduce hypoglycemia, and the ones that you get are more likely to be less severe. I think importantly for a lot of people, especially if they're living alone with type 1 diabetes, that feature is really, really helpful in reducing nocturnal hypoglycemia. So those are the ones that you might not even be aware of that happen overnight, and I think that's a real key advantage.
Can I just also say, just very quickly in regards to that, the only time that my wife and I actually sleep at night, knowing that my daughter is okay, because she's too young still to sort of really understand what's happening during the night, is when she obviously has the pump on and her CGM is working, and we know that if something happens, one, the pump will turn off automatically, and two, it will alarm to let us know that something is happening, rather than just sort of sleeping through the night and not knowing what happens. It's giving us a real-time warning and shutting down and then restarting again, which actually gives us peace of mind, which is great.
Thank you very much for that, Gareth, and thank you very much, Dr. Glastris. So, Gareth, back over to you again. What is your one piece of advice to get the best glycemic control using a pump?
It's a difficult question, but I think it's about being open to understanding yourself, and as Sarah said, it's about understanding the implications of what you put into your body and the implications of what the insulin is going to do against it. If you understand those implications, then you manage it and you address it. Type 1 diabetes isn't simple, but it's manageable, and it's about knowing it and taking advice and learning from mistakes. I make mistakes every other day. I make mistakes with my daughter, I make mistakes with myself. But I know once I've made that mistake, I probably won't make it again, because I take it on board, learn from it, and then move forward. Hypos still happen, hypers still happen, but that is just part of life with type 1 diabetes.
Thank you very much.
And also, I just might add in there, if I can, Gareth, that one other really big advantage of pump therapy is the ability as a clinician and endocrinologist to have a look what's going on with the pump. So if you come and see me, then I can just easily upload your pump, see exactly what rates you've got in there, exactly what glucose levels you've had, when you've gone high, when you've gone low, and to be able to make some decisions about how you change the management going forward, because what's much more difficult is if you get a patient on multiple daily injections and that, you know, they've got some blood glucose records, so they've got some glucose levels, but you don't really know what insulin dose they took, what was going on. So you're really much more in the dark about what the management is like. So for example, with Medtronic, you've got a CareLink system, which really makes it very easy from a clinical point of view of just uploading data, seeing what's going on and being able to make changes, hopefully to avoid those hypoglycemic times and the times when you go high. So I think that is also a very, very big advantage in terms of overall improving glycemic control, being able to reflect and change.
That's a great point, Sarah. I think I can reminisce in regards to one point where we were actually over in the States, so on the other side of the world, and we were having trouble, so we uploaded to the CareLink system. We connected to our team back here in Australia. We're actually able to fix things from the other side of the world. So, yeah, 100% agree.
Thank you very much for that, Gareth, and thank you very much for that, Dr. Glastris. So, Dr. Glastris, just another question for you. I've had people speak about pre-bolusing even on a pump, i.e. 20 minutes before meals, to prevent postprandial post-meal spikes. What is your advice around this?
So I think obviously this person knows a fair bit about pumping already. I think this is getting into the nitty-gritty of pumping, and it really does depend on the patient. So some people are very, very insulin sensitive, so the minute they have some carbohydrates, whoosh, off their sugars go, and they're going up very quickly. So for someone like that, doing a bit of a pre-meal bolus can actually be very, very helpful. For somebody else who isn't as insulin sensitive, might be on more insulin on a daily basis, they don't need to do that kind of pre-bolusing because they just don't need it. The body seems to not react as quickly. So I think that's just, again, looking and seeing what's going on in terms of what you see on a trial and error basis. Yes, maybe you might need to pre-bolus. Maybe you might be someone who benefits from giving some of your insulin now and a bit later, and you can do all those really technical types of manoeuvres with pump therapy. And again, it's just something that you need to get the hang of and discuss with your diabetes team and see what works best for you. But yes, sometimes that is something that you might think about doing, and especially at times where you're wanting really tight glycemic control. Say, for example, you're pregnant and you're wanting that really nice, very, very flat glucose type of pattern throughout the day, you might find that could help. But again, it's just really an individual basis, I'd have to say.
Right. Thank you very much for that, Dr. Glastris. Just another reminder, if you've got any questions, please don't hesitate to ask us on our Facebook page and through using our Twitter hashtag 640G webinar. Okay, back over to you, Gareth. What would you say is the best advantage to using this pump over other therapies?
Talked about it quite a bit tonight, but I think it is purely the flexibility. It's being able to change things on the fly. It's the fact that you're using quick-acting insulin all the time rather than having their long-acting insulin, which stays within the body for an extended period of time. It's being able to fix things when it's a sick day. My daughter has recently had the flu, and as soon as she gets sick, or even a couple of days beforehand, her sugars go through the roof. So we're able to put her insulin levels at 200% of what she usually has to make sure her ketones don't rise, and to make sure she doesn't then go into ketoacidosis. So it really is a great benefit to bring flexibility and put normality back to life as well. If I go for a run, if I do exercise, make the adjustment, and then just go from there.
All right. Thank you very much for that, Gareth. Back over to you, Dr. Glastris. What would you say to people who are newly diagnosed with type 1 regarding pump therapy, young or old?
Sure. So I am a strong believer that knowledge is empowerment. So the more information you can get about your diabetes, about the ways you can deliver insulin, about everything related to your condition, the better. So just find out information. Ask your endocrinologist, ask your diabetes educator, your dietitian, call the pump companies, have a discussion with whoever you talk to at patient groups, get online and have a look what's around, and just get informed. And the more information you get, the more you'll just be in a position to make a really good decision whether it's right for you. And it might not be right for you, but at least then you've got all the information to go forward. And I think, yep, look, again, I just would say flexibility and reduction in hypos, that's the key features that I think are really worthwhile thinking about, even if you're newly diagnosed with diabetes. So those things should be considered.
Thank you very much, Dr. Glastris. Okay, over to you, Gareth, for our final question. What would be your one piece of advice to someone thinking about making the switch to a pump?
Yeah, I think as Sarah has mentioned, it's about knowing all you can about the pump and knowing about your lifestyle as well and what you eat and the carbohydrates, and being open to learn every day. You need to be able to learn and adjust and accept what is happening as you live with type 1 diabetes, especially with a pump. So you can't go on to it expecting that it's going to be a cure, because it isn't. It is just that insulin delivery method, but it's something that can give you a lot more benefit, a lot more flexibility, and a lot more sort of ease of mind for you and for carers as well.
All right, thank you very much, Gareth. Okay, I'd just like to say a very special thank you to both of our speakers tonight. It's been great having you guys on, and again to everyone else who's joined us online. Just
Thanks for having us, Dean. Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys. I'd just like to say one last thing before we wrap up. If you have any additional questions, please do not, as Dr. Glastris has encouraged, do not hesitate to reach out to us. We've got a great team here at Medtronic Diabetes Australia, and they'd love to answer any questions you have. Just to run you through it again, you can reach out to us through our Facebook page, Medtronic Diabetes Oz, through our Instagram, Medtronic Diabetes Oz, and through Twitter, Diabetes ANZ. We've also got a 24-hour helpline on 1800 777 808, so please feel free to reach out to us through any of those mediums. Okay, thank you for joining us, everyone, and have a lovely night.